Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're stepping right off the edge of the known map.
We really are.
Usually, we're here breaking down business trends or history, some complex social phenomenon. But today
Is different.
Today, we're talking about the mechanics of the invisible. We're talking about the literal weight of a human soul, the illusion of time, and the bizarre machinery that kind of keeps us all glued to this reality.
It is a heavy topic. I mean, both literally and figuratively. And I'm glad you used the word mechanics because what we're looking at today isn't really poetry.
Yeah.
It reads more like a technical manual. A manual for a machine we're all driving, but, we don't quite know how to operate it.
Exactly. And because we are dealing with some pretty high-strung metaphysics, we need to be very, very precise about our sources. So we are opening up the archives. Specifically, we're looking at session 197 of the Seth material.
Right. And for the collectors out there, this is from the early sessions, book 4. The session was recorded on October 11, 1965.
And we have to give a massive shout out to the publisher, New Awareness Network, for keeping these transcripts available. I mean, without them, this stuff would just be dust in a basement somewhere.
Absolutely. And if you're listening to this and you find yourself wanting to go to the primary source, which frankly you should, you can find the books at sethcenter.com/the early sessions.
Perfect. One more quick housekeeping note before we dive into the spooky stuff. This podcast is distributed completely free of charge on all major platforms, and it's for educational purposes. We aren't selling you a new religion.
No, we're just reading the files.
Or trying to decipher them, at least.
That too.
So let's set the scene. It's October 1965. It's a Monday night, Elmira, New York. You've got Jane Roberts, who is the medium, and her husband, Rob Butts, who is the scribe.
Right.
Now, if I told you that in about 10 minutes, this woman is going to channel a multidimensional entity to explain the electromagnetic composition of the human spirit, what kind of mood would you expect her to be in?
Zen, peaceful, maybe burning some sage, very calm.
You would think.
Yeah.
You'd expect this sort of wholly detached atmosphere. But that is so not what is happening.
Not even close.
Jane Roberts is actually furious.
She is stressed out of her mind. Yeah.
She is completely fixated on the mail. She's waiting for a letter from her publisher, Frederick Fell. He told her over the phone that her manuscript was fine, but the actual confirmation letter hasn't arrived yet.
So it's not real until it's on paper.
Exactly. So it's 9:00 p.m. She's about to talk to the cosmos, and she's sitting there just stewing, basically asking, where is my letter?
I love that detail. I mean, it is the perfect vibe check for the entire Seth material, isn't it?
It really is.
It grounds the whole thing in the friction of being human. We are about to discuss how the ego manipulates time and the physics of death. But first, we have to deal with the irritation of the U.S. Postal Service.
It's this total clash of the mundane and the miraculous.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually the theme of this entire session. The mission of this deep dive today is to unpack Seth's definition of you. And he doesn't define you as like a personality or a set of hopes and dreams.
No, he defines you as a physics problem.
He does. And he drops some very, very specific data on us. He claims that what we call the spirit, or the inner self, isn't just some airy-fairy concept. It is a literal electromagnetic pattern.
And this is the part that made you stop and rewind, right?
This is it. He gives it a weight. He puts the human soul on a scale.
He says, and I'm quoting here, the electromagnetic reality within the human organism has considerable mass, but the entire physical weight amounts to 3 to 6 ounces at the very most.
3 to 6 ounces.
Yeah.
Let's pause and sit with that for a second. That's nothing.
It's a hamster.
It's a deck of cards, a small bird.
It's so tiny. But the distinction Seth makes is fascinating. He says it has mass but no weight. Or, the weight is so slight it's barely distinguishable from the physical body. He explains that this mass is formed by electrical intensities.
So we are dense, but we aren't heavy. That's a strange concept.
It is. Think of a storm cloud. That's a great analogy you brought up earlier.
Right. A thunderhead holds millions of gallons of water and these massive electrical charges, but it just floats.
Exactly. And Seth calls these electromagnetic frameworks the skeleton forms within physical matter. Think about that image.
The skeleton within matter.
Right. We usually think of our calcium bones as the skeleton that holds up the meat, but Seth is saying there's an energy skeleton that holds up the atoms themselves.
Hang on. Without this 3 to 6 ounce electromagnetic pattern, the physical body wouldn't cohere. It would just be, what, a pile of chemicals?
Precisely. That's the idea. It's the invisible scaffolding. It's the blueprint. And What is really interesting is what this blueprint is made of. It's not just energy in some abstract New Age sense.
It's made of us, right? Our memories, our experiences.
It's made of our experiences, and this is the key technical insight of the session, I think. Seth says, one electrical pulsation can represent an emotional experience.
Okay, so every time you feel something, fear, love, embarrassment, joy, that experience is encoded. It becomes a pulsation.
A literal piece of your structure.
So my memories aren't just like files stored in the gray matter of my brain. They are the actual structural beams of my soul.
Yes. And Seth explains that the intensity of the experience determines how strongly it is recorded. So a boring Tuesday where you just watched TV and went to bed, that's a weak signal, a very low charge.
Barely registers.
Barely registers. But the time you fell in love, or the time you had that car accident, or that moment of pure terror or joy.
Those are high voltage.
Those are high-voltage structural beams in your electromagnetic skeleton.
That is profound, but it's also kind of terrifying. It means my trauma is load-bearing.
Essentially, yes. We are built out of our past intensities. The you that weighs 3 ounces is a collection of every strong feeling you've ever had, encoded electromagnetically.
It's funny, Seth actually cracks a joke about this, doesn't he? I completely missed it the first time I read the transcript, but you pointed it out.
Oh, yeah, it's great. It's right after he explains all this dense physics of electricity and identity. He just pauses and says, you should get a charge out of this material if you will excuse a poor pun.
Get a charge out of it.
It's a dad joke from the 4th dimension.
I love that. It reminds us that this isn't some, cold, unfeeling computer speaking. It's a person. Just a person without a physical body.
He has a sense of humor. He's trying to lighten the mood while he's explaining, the quantum mechanics of consciousness.
Exactly. Okay, so we've established the hardware. We are these 3 to 6 ounce electromagnetic clouds walking around in meat suits. That's the takeaway.
A good summary, yeah.
But if we are these complex energy beings capable of so much, why does life feel so slow? I mean, why do we have to wait for the mail? Why doesn't everything just happen at once?
This brings us to the second big concept of the session, a really big one. We have to talk about the manager, the sensor. We have to talk about the ego.
The ego. Seth seems to talk about the ego like it's a bouncer at a club.
That is a perfect description. I was thinking the exact same thing. Seth explains that we have an intuitive self that can perceive things incredibly fast, maybe even simultaneously.
Okay.
The intuitive self sees the whole picture, it gets everything it wants, but the ego is insecure, it's worried about maintaining its dominance, it wants to be in charge.
So the ego is a control freak.
Completely, a total control freak. Seth says the ego censors anything which it feels is a threat to its own dominance. And here's where it gets really, really interesting regarding time.
Right.
Seth suggests that what we perceive as time, one event happening after another, linear progression, is actually an artificial construct created by the ego.
Wait, unpack that. You're saying time isn't a fundamental law of the universe? It's just the ego's lag.
Basically, it's a processing delay. Seth says the ego cannot make swift decisions as can the intuitive self. Therefore, it perceives events in a peculiar manner, almost in slow motion.
That is mind-blowing. So the universe might be happening all at once, but my ego is so slow that it has to buffer the video. And that buffering, that's what we call Tuesday.
That is exactly it. It buffers reality so it doesn't get overwhelmed. It forces events into a series past, present, future just so it can cope with the data stream. It's a focusing mechanism, really.
But why? Is the ego just bad at its job? Are we saddled with this slow, outdated processor?
No, and this is the important part. It's not a flaw. It's a training mechanism. Seth says this appearance of separate events trains the intellect.
How so? I'm not following.
Well, think about it. If you knew everything instantly, if you saw the cause and the effect simultaneously, you wouldn't really understand the relationship between them, would you?
I guess not.
You wouldn't learn logic. The intellect needs to see, I drop the cup, followed by the cup breaks, to understand gravity and fragility and consequence.
Ah, okay. It's like learning to drive. You start in a parking lot going 5 miles an hour. You don't jump straight onto the Autobahn.
So you'd crash. Exactly. The ego keeps us in the parking lot so we can learn how to steer.
That makes a lot of sense.
But Seth offers a very optimistic view of human evolution here. He implies we won't be in the parking lot forever.
Right, he talks about the future of the ego, that it's not a static thing.
Exactly. He says, in the future, the ego will expand. It will stop fearing the barrage of experiences and become a master organizer. It'll learn to handle the speed.
So we are upgrading the processor. The firmware is getting an update.
That's a good way to put it. And Seth points out that scientists, they look at the size of the brain to measure evolution. He says that's looking at the wrong thing.
It's not about brain size.
It's about the electrical connections. He says we are forming millions of new connections, new gestalts. The ego is learning to handle more bandwidth. Eventually, we will be able to accept more of reality simultaneously without needing to slow it down so much.
I can't wait for that update. Seriously, I'd love to perceive Wednesday on Tuesday and just get it over with.
Be careful what you wish for. That leads us directly into what happens when the system crashes.
Or when it shuts down.
Right.
Death.
Death.
So we have this 3 to 6 ounce electromagnetic pattern. What happens to it when the physical body dies? Does it just dissipate? Like steam?
No, and this is the comforting part of the session, I think. Seth is very specific. He says at physical death, the connection is severed, and polarities are changed in reverse fashion.
Reverse polarity. It sounds like something out of Star Trek, but in this context, it sounds like?
Yeah.
Like you're safely unplugging a device from the wall.
That's a great way to put it. It's the mechanics of exiting the physical system. But the key takeaway here is that the individual identity remains intact. Seth says, the individual identity, composed of its electrically and magnetically coded experiences, is therefore intact.
So you are still you. You just don't have the heavy lifting of the physical body anymore. All that data, all those experiences are preserved.
Right. And interestingly, he says the ego and the subconscious, which we think of as separate things right now, they unite. They become one streamlined consciousness.
The bouncer retires.
The bouncer retires, and the intuitive self takes over full time.
That sounds really peaceful, actually. But Seth also mentioned something that sounds a little less peaceful. He talks about freak electrical storms.
Oh, this is one of the most fascinating parts of the session for me. This connects to reincarnation and past lives, but he frames it entirely through physics. It's not spiritual in the way we usually think of it.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because usually people think of past lives as these, like, romantic stories. Oh, I was Cleopatra, or I was a knight in shining armor.
Right.
Seth makes it sound like a radio interference problem.
That is exactly what it is. He describes past identities as being coded within us, but they're on a specific intensity range. So usually we can't hear them. They are on a different frequency.
Okay, so they are running in the background, like apps on a phone that aren't open on the screen.
Perfect analogy, yes. But Seth says that sometimes the chemical nature of certain emotional experiences can cause a freak electrical storm within your identity system.
A freak electrical storm in your soul. That's a chilling phrase.
It is. And when that storm hits, the barriers between frequencies break down and you get a bleed through. A sudden, intense recall of a past life.
And it's not a spiritual revelation, necessarily.
No, he frames it as a glitch in the electromagnetic matrix caused by an intense emotion in the present.
You know, that makes so much sense. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt an emotion that seemed way too big for what was actually happening?
All the time.
Like you drop a coffee cup and you feel this wave of existential despair. It's completely out of proportion.
Or you meet someone new and feel an instant overwhelming recognition or, dislike for no reason at all.
Exactly. Maybe that's the electrical storm. The emotion in the present moment matches the frequency of a past life, a past trauma or joy, and the spark just jumps the gap.
That's a very Secchian way to look at it. It grounds these mystical experiences in the mechanics of energy, and it connects directly to how he explains telepathy, too.
Right, because telepathy isn't just like reading words in someone's head.
No. It's the transmission of these entire electromagnetic patterns, the whole gestalt.
Right.
But there's a rule, a very important one. Seth says, in almost all cases, however, there must be an emotional attraction.
You have to care.
You have to care or hate. Intensity is the key. Love, hate, fear, deep concern. That emotional connection creates the conductive wire for the thought to travel.
So you can't just, like, telepathically spy on boring strangers.
The signal won't go through. There's no emotional carrier wave to piggyback on. It's not strong enough.
Which explains why, when your best friend is upset a moment before they call you, but you have no idea what the guy sitting across from you on the bus is thinking about.
Exactly. The universe runs on emotional voltage.
Okay, so we've got the theory. We are electromagnetic ghosts, our ego is a slow bouncer, and emotions are the electricity that powers everything.
That's the gist of it.
But what I love about the Seth material, and this session in particular, is that it isn't just a lecture. Rob and Jane are actually testing him. They're running experiments.
They are. And this is where we transition to the real world segment of the night, the experiments.
So it's still Monday night. They've done the lecture part. And now Rob hands Jane a sealed envelope. This is what they call the envelope test.
And the context here is key. This isn't just a letter. Roy has taken a page from his notepad, made a tracing of a photograph, and sealed it in a double envelope with Bristol board stiffeners.
Which are basically just pieces of cardboard, right? So you can't feel what's inside or see through it.
Right. It's to make it as blind as possible.
And Jane, well, Seth, through Jane, starts giving impressions of what is inside. And the list he gives is, well, it's weirdly specific.
It is. Seth says, 5, the color yellow. 2 people who have a dog. Arch shape. Something hot. A hot day. And then 2 initials, an F and a W.
Now, you have to imagine being Jane. She wakes up from the trance. Rob opens the envelope and he pulls out the paper. And it's just a pencil tracing on white paper.
No color, no dog, no sun.
She's disappointed. You can read it in the notes. She thinks she failed. She's looking at her score for the night and thinking she got a 0.
But Rob, who knows the context of how he prepared the test, starts verifying the hits. And this is where the chilling accuracy comes in. It's just phenomenal.
Okay, let's go through it. Seth said the color yellow. The drawing is on white paper. A total miss, right?
You'd think so.
But
Rob notes that the walls of his studio, where he prepared the test just hours earlier, are painted a bright yellow.
Whoa. Okay, so he's picking up the environment where the test was made.
Exactly. But it gets weirder. Seth said 2 people who have a dog and something hot, a hot day. The drawing didn't show any of that. It was a miss.
Wait.
But UT, the cardboard stiffeners, the Bristol board, Rob had reused them from a previous project.
Okay.
They were previously used to hold a photograph of their dog, Misha, who at this point is dead.
No way.
And that photo of the dog, it was taken on a brutally hot summer day.
That's incredible. And the initials. The W.
In that same photograph, Jane was standing with a man named Bill. His friends called him Bill, but his name was William. W for William.
That is just, it's unbelievable. And it tells us something huge about how this works. Seth wasn't reading the paper inside the envelope.
Not at all. He was reading the history of the object. He was reading the cardboard.
The electromagnetic residue left on the stiffener.
Precisely. It's a classic example of what's called psychometry. It shows that objects, from this perspective, act like tape recorders. The cardboard remembered the photo of the dog, it remembered the heat of the day, and it remembered the man named Bill.
That is both incredibly cool and slightly terrifying. It means everything we touch might be recording us.
According to Seth's theory of electromagnetic reality, yes, we are leaving energy fingerprints on everything, all the time.
They also did another reading that night, right? For a Dr. Instream. Who was he?
He seems to be a researcher or an acquaintance they're tuning into remotely. This wasn't an envelope test. They just focused on his name.
And what were the impressions?
Again, very specific, mundane stuff. Seth gets mud and water, umbrellas, number 12, and this is the best one. A dog with wet hair, a shaggy one.
A dog with wet hair.
Yep.
That is so specific. It's not a golden retriever in a field of flowers. It's a wet, shaggy dog.
It grounds the supernatural, doesn't it? He also mentions Dr. Instream is concerned with the schedule, smoking outside as he walks, and that it is rainy and dark where he is.
It paints such a vivid picture of just a real person. A guy standing in the rain, having a cigarette, looking at his watch with his wet dog next to him.
It takes it so far out of the realm of generic fortune-telling. If you were faking this, you'd say, I see great success in his future, or something vague. You wouldn't say, I see a wet, shaggy dog and some mud.
It feels like surveillance.
Yeah.
It honestly feels like Seth is just accessing a security camera feed somewhere.
It does, but the session ends with something even more intriguing than that. A prediction. A time-stamped prediction.
Yes. The Puerto Rico trip. This is great.
So their friends, Bill and Peggy Gallagher, the same Bill from the photograph, by the way, are going on vacation to Puerto Rico.
Okay.
And Seth signs off for the night with this little tidbit. He says, I believe a rather bizarre event will occur regarding the Gallaghers at approximately 5 o'clock during their vacation.
A rather bizarre event. At 5:00 p.m., that's so ominously vague, but incredibly specific on the time.
It's perfect, isn't it? It creates this massive suspense. You can just imagine Rob and Jane looking at each other after the session like, ugh. Do we tell them? Do we warn them?
I would 100% be checking my watch at 4:59 p.m. every single day of that vacation if I were the Gallaghers.
Me too. And speaking of anxiety, we have to touch on Jane's state of mind during the session one more time. We mentioned she was mad about the mail from her publisher,
Right.
but she was also getting really stressed about these tests.
She was worried about her score, wasn't she? Like
Yeah.
it's a pop quiz she has to pass every week.
Exactly, and Seth calls her out on it. He basically says, your ego is getting in the way again. So he changes the rules of the experiment.
What does he do?
He tells Rob directly, I will no longer ask you if you have a test. You will simply, at your leisure, hand me a test. Do not tell Ruburt that's Seth's name for Jane the results immediately.
He's trying to bypass her anxiety, to short-circuit it.
He's trying to bypass her ego. Remember what we said earlier, the ego sensors. If Jane knows a test is coming, her ego tenses up. It starts trying to get it right, to perform.
And that just creates static noise.
Probably a ton of noise. But if Rob just hands the envelope to her spontaneously, the intuitive self can grab the information before the ego has time to freak out and interfere.
It's a literal hacks of the human brain. Surprise yourself so you don't overthink it.
It's good advice for creativity, too, not just psychic readings. I mean, the best ideas often come when you aren't trying to force them, you know?
Absolutely. So looking back at this entire session, we have this incredible roadmap of what we are. We aren't solid. We are these 3 to 6 ounce electromagnetic patterns, filtering reality through a slow ego, connected to our past lives by electrical storms, and leaving our fingerprints on everything we touch.
And all of this was dictated by a woman sitting in a rocking chair in Elmira, New York, who was just really, really annoyed that her publisher hadn't written to her yet.
The duality of man,
Yeah.
or the duality of the medium, I guess.
It really drives home Seth's point that the physical and the non-physical are completely intertwined. We are spiritual beings, yes, but we are also biological creatures who get annoyed when the mail is late. The electromagnetic skeleton is wearing clothes and paying bills.
So what does this mean for you listening right now? I mean, how do we apply any of this?
I think it just invites us to look at our own lives differently. If your emotions are electrical pulsations that are literally recording your history and building your structure,
Yeah.
what kind of history are you building? What kind of charge are you putting out?
That's a good question.
And if your ego is just a bouncer that's slowing things down for your own good, maybe we can learn to trust our intuition a bit more. Maybe we don't need to buffer so much of reality.
And maybe we should be careful what we use as stiffeners in our envelopes, because they might be broadcasting our secrets to the universe.
That too. Always use fresh cardboard, a very practical tip from session 197.
I have a final thought for everyone to mull over before we wrap up. If Seth is right, and our past lives are just radio stations playing on a different intensity range, all inside our own electrical field, what would it take to tune into them intentionally?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe more importantly, would you even want to?
That is the question, isn't it? Do you want to risk the freak electrical storm?
I think I'm good with just this life for now. It's complicated enough as it is.
I agree. One timeline is plenty for me.
No, we've covered a lot, but this is really just scratching the surface of the Seth material. If you want to dive deeper, and you really should, because we can't capture the full nuance and detail here, you have to go to the source.
Yes. Please do not just take our word for it. Study the books for yourself. Go to sethcenter.com/the early sessions. That's the New Awareness Network website and bookstore.
Find the session. Read session 197 for yourself. Read Rob's footnotes. His notes on the validation of these tests are so meticulous and fascinating.
We really are.
And remember, keep your electromagnetic patterns positive and maybe cut your ego some slack. It's doing its best to process the entire universe for you.
Indeed it is.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
See you next time.
This podcast is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes. Catch you on the next wave.